Titans, go!
Hello again, Titans fans. Welcome back to Titan Talk, the Titans podcast, or, of course, the Doom Patrol podcast, as we once again covered the latest episode of the DC Universe series, Doom Patrol. I'm your host, Charles Skaggs, and with me, of course, is another host, my partner in Doom, shall we say, Jesse Jackson. Hi, Jesse. How are you today?
I am good, Charles. How are you?
I'm just trying to change things up a little bit on the old.
I see that. Nice.
Some mixed results, probably.
Yeah, that's okay.
All right. So I'm doing great and ready to talk some Doom Patrol with you.
Yeah. In fact, I'm glad you mentioned trying to change things up. I feel like this episode was sort of a change-up episode. I know you and I are both big baseball fans, and so you will have your fastball, you'll have your curve, and every once in a while you throw your change-up to kind of mix things up. And I feel like this was a little bit of a change-up.
Well, this is also like a little bit of a little change in the roster, a little bit too, because we have Rita taking a very active role in this episode, and the introduction of some new characters, obviously a lot of characters familiar to Doom Patrol fans like myself.
Yes.
Which we'll talk about here in a minute. But looking forward to getting your thoughts on these new characters and the way they were depicted in this episode. Yeah,
good stuff.
All right, so obviously we're going to talk Doom Patrol. Yes, I know that's Department of Redundancy Department with that title, but Doom Patrol here at episode 26, which was, of course, the 6th episode of Doom Patrol Season 1, released just a couple days ago on March 22nd, 2019. Written by Tamara Becker Wilkinson, once again. She wrote the previous episode, Puppet Patrol, which was the 3rd episode, and I'm kind of noticing a little bit of a theme with her episodes because they definitely embrace the Grant Morrison weirdness in that. This episode was also directed by Christopher Manley, a new director for the series.
Yeah, and Charles, I after watching the episode, I did a little online research, and I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts because it appears this is a pretty we really go to the Grant Morrison era on this.
Well, actually, a little bit in the Grant Morrison era, but mostly this was kind of like the going back to the 70s and the kind of early 80s Doom Patrol a little bit with the new Doom Patrol that was kind of created by Paul Levitz and Joe Staton, if I believe.
Okay, well, good.
But when they were kind of reintroduced in Showcase number 94 through 96, because we get the introduction of some of the kind of second iteration of the Doom Patrol. We get the introduction of Celsius, Lodestone, and also Tempest in this story, Joshua Clay, who we'll talk about. And just for to kind of give it a little bit of a very 60s throwback vibe, we also get the introduction of Mento, a.k.a. Steve Dayton, and love interest, at least briefly here, of Rita Farr, Last Woman.
Yeah, very cool.
So very cool. And we also get a quick cameo of, once again, Animal Vegetable Mineral Man, which we should have a little bit of fun talking about for a little bit.
Absolutely.
So the guest cast in this episode, Will Kemp played Steve Dayton. And also David Bialowski played the old Steve Dayton, Mento. Jasmine Kaur played Celsius, along with Metter Jaffrey, who played the older Celsius. And for a very quick cameo, we had Lisa Wilson as Lodestone, a.k.a. Rhea Jones, who factors into Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol a bit. I'm wondering if we're going to see her again, but maybe not. We'll see. We'll find out. We also got the introduction of Alimi Ballard as Joshua Clay, a.k.a. the superhero Tempest, the first Tempest before Garth of Atlantis became Tempest for the Titans.
Mm-hmm.
But Josh was known as Tempest and was an active superhero until he kind of retired his superhero identity, but still hung out with the Doom Patrol. And I'm glad to see him factored in, and I'm kind of thinking we probably haven't seen the last of him either. We get the return briefly of Alec Mappa as Animal Vegetable Mineral Man, and the return of Phil Morris as Silas Stone, Vic's father. So a lot of guest cast in this episode.
There is, and it was good to see all of them back. I really think the guy who played Dayton really did a good job. It felt like
the younger Dayton.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, he was. He has definitely that kind of 50s rich guy vibe to him.
Yes, absolutely.
And which obviously made him a perfect complement to Rita Farr, who's living in the past, but maybe not living in the past, as we find out during the course of the story.
Absolutely.
At least at the end. All right. So any initial thoughts of this episode before we get into our main topics?
Kind of as I mentioned, I felt like this was a nice change of pace. And I felt I really liked it a lot. It was interesting. After I did some research, a few of the people who have been very happy with the show were a little disappointed in this episode. So I'm kind of looking forward to what your thoughts. Yeah, just slightly. They just were.
Maybe because there wasn't as much emphasis on the actual Doom Patrol.
Yeah,
that we know.
Yeah, and so and it wasn't a. I mean, most of them said that it was a good episode, just not a great episode. And I kind of disagree. I felt like, I'll talk more specific, but after watching this, I went, wow, I'm really glad we're talking about this, because this show has a tone. It has a feel that it's a little bit zany, a little bit crazy, and all of a sudden, this wasn't zany. It wasn't crazy. It felt like the Doom Patrol, but as I said, it felt like a totally different kind of storytelling, and I thought they did it really well.
Yeah, I was a big fan of this episode because we got the chance to dive a little deeper into Doom Patrol history from the comics. One of the great things about this series is that it's not just drawing from the Grant Morrison era.
Yeah.
It's drawing from the original 60s era, and then also from, like I said, the 70s and 80s incarnation of the Doom Patrol, to kind of and then with a little bit of Jeff Johns thrown in for good measure. So if you're a fan of like maybe one particular era of the Doom Patrol or another, there's at least something for everybody, or at least for every Doom Patrol fan here. And this episode was another great excuse to kind of broaden the Doom Patrol universe a little bit. And I'm kind of curious to see if, like, maybe, like I talked about, though, maybe we'll see the return of some characters later on.
Good. Okay.
All right. Let's go into our topics this week. There is a theme, and hopefully it should be a little obvious given the setting of a lot of this episode. All right, so with that little tease in mind, topic number 1. Oh, yes, I'm the great pretender.
Very nice.
And that was a version by the Platters that was done back in the day, so I'll just leave that there. And this I want to talk about right off the bat, Rita. and also Jane and Larry in this segment, because Jane, as we find out through the course of last week's episode, was kind of given the prompt by Mr. Nobody to go check out the Doom Patrol. And Jane was left going, what the F is the Doom Patrol?
Yeah.
And so she kind of digs a little bit. She digs and learns a little bit and kind of drags Rita and Larry along for the ride. And I want to get your thoughts on these three characters who are kind of like our prime Doom Patrol characters in this episode.
I was really happy. This had and this is where they got very meta, and I'm sure you'll have more details about this, but it felt like, oh, look, we're in an X-Men movie. We've got a school and we've got students, paying attention, and as you are probably very aware, there was a little discussion that back in the day that Kirby and Lee may have borrowed a little bit from the Doom Patrol when they were building the X-Men.
Right. There's always that debate about which came first.
Yes.
And so I agree. I think this was a little bit of an homage to the X-Men a little bit here.
Yeah, and so I really I loved seeing the flashbacks.
Right.
Rita trying to get back, the creepiness of the producer.
That was a really powerful scene that we kind of opened up the episode with.
Yeah, and the whole you hear jokes about the
casting couch.
Yes, exactly, and then to see her lose it, and
well, you can kind of see how it was so easy for producers and directors to kind of take advantage of these women who were just trying to develop a career and kind of use that power to get, sexual favors or what have you. Yeah. And even Rita, who is obviously very reluctant about it, is just so desperate to get her career back that she even grudgingly goes along with it for a little bit.
Yeah, and the whole Me Too movement goes old school. And she so wants her career, and he's just, you haven't had a hit in a long time, and right. And then for her losing control, so I think this helps shows her guilt, right. And the reason why she at times under stress does become unraveled, so to speak, right? She loses control of her body.
Yeah, and that this episode pretty much laid it out on the table that it's not just physical, her condition, it's also psychological.
Yes.
And it's how she views herself. Mm-hmm. And you notice that she loses control when she seems to have this low self-esteem of herself. Like when she's going along with that producer, basically all over like a cheap suit, and she resents herself for it.
Yeah.
You kind of see that on her face just before her face starts to melt. And she turns into this big, ginormous blob that smothers the producer and kills him.
And then and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, and then how safe Steve made her feel
right.
when they were going to become intimate. That, because she was like, wear the helmet, and he's like, I wear it, but I don't think I need it.
Right.
And
I like the fact that he goes she has to go well, it's nothing kinky.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
About it, but I just I want to be able to be with you.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid of losing control, and he's like, well, I trust you. You're stronger than you think.
Yeah.
And so obviously they have apparently carried that off. It's kind of, in a very 50s type depiction.
Yes.
They cut away just before things get hot and heavy.
Yeah, and it felt right.
Very retro.
Yeah, because of the thing, it felt very right for them to show it that way.
Yeah, it's much more tastefully done that way.
Yeah,
And obviously very appropriate to the setting of the 50s.
absolutely.
Um, so um, getting back to the director a little bit. So when Rita smothers him, um, we get the vibe that it's accidental. It wasn't intentional that
Oh, no. Yeah, I totally agree.
she's very horrified by it. And then there's that great moment where the secretary comes in, the director's secretary, or the
Hmm.
producer or whatever, and he's like, she's like, look, she figures, well, okay, there's not a mark on him. He's not bleeding or shot or anything, so he must have died from a heart attack because
Yeah.
he's old. And they had this, the secretary and this Rita had this kind of like unspoken communication between one another until the secretary goes, honey, look, just go, you were never here.
Yeah,
And this kind of unspoken understanding between them about this.
yeah. She takes off her sweater. She uses it to cover because Rita's blouse is undone, and it's very clear what was happening. And I thought that was very nice. This moment of sisterhood, because you could see the secretary assistant rolling her eyes, going, "Okay, this again." So I thought that was a really nice moment, and but I think in a way that added to Rita's guilt. Like, oh, I got away with it. I killed this person and I got away with it.
Right.
Because she feels,
Well, she blames herself.
exactly.
And so I think of the fact that, because of this loss of control, and this is probably why she's so obsessed with getting control,
Yes,
is that she doesn't obviously want this to happen again.
absolutely.
And she doesn't want to hurt anybody,
No.
but she has, and there's that guilt because she's never really been held accountable for that, I think.
Hmm.
And another thing that we find out in this episode, it's kind of teased. I'm kind of thinking we'll probably get more about this later. There's this bit toward the end of the episode where Mento shows Rita this image of this crying young woman named Mary Beth,
Hmm.
and Mary Beth slits her wrists right in front of Rita, as we see in the vision, in the mental projection. But then we get this flashback where apparently we get a little bit of the story of Mary Beth, is that Steve is upset with Rita. We kind of got the vibe that early in the episode that Rita had broken things off with Steve. But
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I kind of got the impression that Steve broke things off with her because of something that Rita did that caused this poor Mary Beth to commit suicide. And we didn't get the full story of that.
So good. I'm glad you said that because I was a little confused. I got that same feeling that something had happened.
So that makes sense then. Yeah.
It does make sense to me. Yeah.
And it just kind of leaves that this is some other trauma of Rita's that we is going to be told at some future point.
Yes, I agree.
Some other that's probably adding to just this tremendous guilt and affecting her conscience and her self-esteem.
I agree.
Now she does kind of come out a little bit through that and come out the other side, and she has this kind of a little bit of an epiphany that I thought we should really talk about. Is that Rita, at long last, has kind of decided she doesn't want to be Rita Farr anymore. She doesn't want to live in the past anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And she even takes the steps of, in her room, taking down all those starlet photos of herself around her mirror.
Yeah.
And so what did you think of that moment where she kind of decides she wants to be something else, someone else, to quote Arrow?
So my hope is that we will start seeing less of her losing
control.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is be the first step toward Rita getting her act together finally. Yeah. And being able to be more of a asset to the team.
Yeah, and I think that would be really good.
And the last woman that we know and love.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I
because
thought it was an important moment for her.
I think it's a real important moment, and I think it's important that we see her move forward.
Right.
Part of the reason is that they're all been kind of stuck. One of the things I thought interesting is it appeared Steve had not aged, even though they
Yes.
had talked about all these decades.
Right, and
And
the thing about the patrol, that you bring this up, is that you notice a lot of them don't age,
yes,
including the chief, and
right.
there's a reason for that. I think that we're going to find out later.
Mm-hmm.
That's also based on kind of Doom Patrol lore.
Yeah, and so I was, Rita, it makes sense why she doesn't age. It makes sense
Right.
why Larry. It makes sense by Robert. Don't understand
Right.
Jane
You mean
yet.
Cliff?
Yeah, Cliff.
Yeah.
Robert. Yeah. God. Duh.
That's all right.
Cliff. Yes.
I think you were thinking Robot Man.
Yeah. Exactly. And
yeah.
but it made, and so it was a nice when they're revealed that they actually are very old, and the building is in such bad shape because they've been living just in a pure
the original
fantasy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a big moment. That's one of the things I want to talk about when we talk about the original Doom Patrol here in our next segment. But yeah, it's kind of a revelation.
Okay.
And very tragic. And I want to talk about that here in a minute.
Good.
Let's talk about Jane.
Okay.
So Jane, she has some kind of a little bit of development to her in this episode, because Jane, she starts off wanting to basically, at the prompting of Mr. Nobody, to find out what the deal is with the Doom Patrol, this Doom Patrol that she's heard about. And she goes through like a bunch of the Chief's old tapes, which apparently is the go-to thing for everybody at Doom Manor while the Chief's gone, to go like, okay, I need to learn more about what the Chief's been keeping from me, so let's watch these old tapes he's kept.
Yeah.
And she watches this old tape of her as baby doll being interviewed by the Chief, and he name drops the original Doom Patrol.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you think of that moment?
I thought it was interesting. First, I love the retro feel of the tapes. We've talked about that before, but it's, it's not
on the black
digital.
And white TV,
yeah,
black
it
and white
is.
TV.
Yeah. So you can tell how old.
Very analog.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's very, very cool. So we'll see what happens. I like the, all the, this change in what we've known. I had complained in the Titans episode, this kind of that saved as the pilot, that the Chief wasn't a very likable person.
Right.
And in this series, he has come across much more likable and much more someone that
he could be a dick, but he's not just a dick.
Right.
He does have good redeeming qualities as well, and that makes him a much more well-rounded character, I think.
But this episode really shows, as you're saying, his being a jerk, being a dick. This really shows a lot of that.
Right.
And I thought that was really well done.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that we find out about the Chief, is that the Chief kind of abandoned the original Doom Patrol.
Mm-hmm.
And Jane, toward the end of the episode, kind of is like, well, is that what he's going to do to us?
Yeah, they mention he gets tired of his broken toys.
Right.
And he moves on.
And apparently there's this implication that Jane, the Chief considered her broken as well.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently on her real room door that is at this estate is that it had all these padlocks on the door. That she was something that needed to be kept inside, prisoner. Like it was the locks weren't on the inside; they were on the outside of the door, in the hallway.
Yeah.
To keep her in there. So the Chief kind of viewed her as something that needed other people needed to be protected from.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly what that's about.
No, I think we're going to learn more about that later,
I think
too.
so too. Yeah.
But yeah, there's just a lot of, like, they answer some questions, but a great show introduces more questions.
Absolutely.
To keep you hooked and like, okay, I got to find out what the deal is with this.
I totally agree.
And that's great. So one of the very important things that we find out about Jane, as Mento's kind of messing with her head toward the end of the episode, after the real shabby conditions of the building is revealed, and we find out that, hey, it's not this school for gifted youngsters like the X-Men. It's actually this like retirement home for the old Doom Patrol because they're completely damaged after fighting Mr. Nobody, and they have been for decades. And with that, they haven't recovered. But so Jane, as she's kind of wandering around, trying to figure out what's going on with the building's real condition revealed, she starts seeing these puzzle pieces starting to fall out of cabinets, and all of a sudden the amount just grows and grows and becomes this kind of raging river of puzzle pieces, kind of like The Shining.
Yes, it
which
did
gets
feel that little bit.
Which gets a shout out in this episode. And, like kind of that river of blood in The Shining. Only this time it's a river of puzzle pieces. And she hears this male voice, saying, like, sweet baby, sweet baby. And then you see a hand come out and say, come join me. I kind of know what that is.
Okay.
But I'm kind of curious about what you thought about. What do you think that was?
No idea. In fact, I was really confused.
Because I don't want to spoil
about
it.
I appreciate that. But I was confused about the puzzle pieces.
Yes.
What's going on? Not in a way like, oh, this frustrates me. I was like, okay, I don't know, but I'm sure they're going to show me later.
Yeah, all I will say is it's something extremely important to Jane's character and what happened to her.
Okay, good.
When she was younger. So,
right.
So definitely pay close attention to that in future episodes, as they kind of probably tease more of it.
Okay.
But I was really glad that that's finally getting addressed.
Good.
Because it's kind of essential to the character, I think.
Very nice.
So I was very happy with that. Let's talk about Larry really quickly. Larry kind of gets paired off. He gets sent off on a tour with Arani Desai, a.k.a. Celsius, and who's, because of Mento, projected as this slightly older version of herself, even though she's in reality much, much older and much more incapacitated. And Celsius kind of takes Larry around on this tour, which we'll talk about here. But Larry's asking her questions and trying to get to this understanding of the chief.
Yeah.
And what her connection is to him. And that kind of becomes important. And then later on, we kind of see him face this kind of figure in a trench coat and a fedora hat, and that essentially is trying to tell Larry that he and his other self, presumably the negative spirit, have a purpose, something that needs to be done.
Yeah.
What did you think about that? Because I was kind of intrigued by that as well.
Yeah, I like that. One of the things I enjoyed was seeing that the two parts of Larry, him and his inside, negative man, seem to be finding a truce. Finding a way to work together.
Yeah, you kind of saw him cradling his negative spirit as his glowing chest at the end of the episode.
And he actually helped them. He kind of saved the day,
right?
Because which was good to see. I mean, I understand them taking a while to get there, but to get that advancement.
It's a very easy solution is that, hey, well, Mento's causing all this. Let's take off his Mento helmet.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Larry's negative spirit is able to do that and not be affected by the projections.
Exactly.
So, so the negative spirit kind of saves the day in this episode.
Yeah, he does. And so it's good to see that. I'm not sure yet how all this backstory is going to come out.
Right.
You know, so I think we're going to have to wait and see what that is. They're giving us a little bit of that at a time.
Well, you can't just bombard the audience with all this backstory.
Exactly. So
you have to kind of dole it out in chunks.
Yes, exactly.
And hope the audience kind of keeps going along with it.
Yeah, I agree.
But it does. I mean, obviously gives you more and more insight into these characters and why they're so the way they are.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Absolutely.
All right. Anything else about Rita, Jane, and Larry before we move on?
Nope, not at all.
All right, topic number 2. You make me feel so young. You make me sing as spring has sprung. So that's a Frank Sinatra classic, of course.
Yes.
Butchered by yours truly. And this I want to talk about Joshua and the Doom Patrol. The original Doom Patrol, you might say. And obviously, these 4 characters are introduced. So we get Tempest, like I talked about, Joshua Clay, and also Lodestone, a.k.a. Rhea Jones, Celsius, a.k.a. Arani, Desai, although she thinks Arani called her. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. And, of course, Mento.
Yes.
So we kind of get the revelation in this episode that, hey, the Chief had another group of misfit superheroes and didn't tell the current Doom Patrol that they existed. So what did you think of all these new characters and their, that kind of brought in from DC's Doom Patrol past into the story?
So, if I have a nitpick, they did not explain who they were very much.
Right.
The 2 female characters did not get as much attention as Steve did.
Right.
So you weren't quite sure what their powers were and kind of that feeling. Someone like yourself who knew them
yes.
Was a little bit better than I am. But it was okay. It wasn't bad enough that I was confused. It just made me, want to look up things.
Yeah.
I love the idea that, I'm married to the Chief. What? And
yeah, so Larry gets that little bit of a curveball, and he's like, wait a second, what?
Yeah.
The Chief has a wife? What's up with this? He never told us?
Yeah, and the idea, which, by the way, would not have surprised me. I would have okay, that makes sense. Because he goes on routine trips. We've established that, so that would make sense. I also wasn't surprised when we found out this was all just an illusion that they're giving in. So I liked the fantasy version of them, and then I was very touched by the reality version.
Right.
And I especially like the ending where the doctor and I'm hoping you can give me a little more of his backstories.
Joshua.
They did not give him a lot of.
Right. Well, they kind of teased some stuff between him and Larry.
Yeah.
So there was one scene. So Joshua Clay. Give a little bit of backstory. So he was a member of the 70s, 80s Doom Patrol, what was called the New Doom Patrol back in the day, and he was a former soldier that eventually got these powers, and which were essentially kind of like these energy projection blasts. Mm-hmm. We don't get to see them here, but Joshua does eventually reveal that yes, he's a metahuman, which he doesn't like to use his powers, and as we're told, but he finds them occasionally helpful to kind of keep the rest of the original Doom Patrol in line. But here he's kind of given this therapist administrator role to oversee everybody and kind of give them their medications and whatnot, almost like a caretaker for them, for the original Doom Patrol. And as a result, he kind of like he's the kind of like the necessary exposition character, kind of give us this much needed info, but he's very protective. He's very secretive. He doesn't give it out until he absolutely has to at the end, and then he finally comes clean. And probably because just like he's been keeping the secret so long for the chief, I'm not sure he's sure why. And
yeah, and I don't understand kind of why is he doing this?
Right.
And what is he getting out of it? And what is his purpose?
And that's kind of why I'm wondering if we're going to see him again. Because there's two reasons. There's that whole explanation, okay, so how did you hook up with the chief?
Yeah.
And why are you there? Why are you the one taking care of these people? And, what's your backstory?
Mm-hmm.
And then there was this very brief exchange, which I thought was really interesting with Larry in the hallway, where Larry's going, he kind of finds Joshua familiar. And he's like, were you in the military? And Joshua is very reluctant about saying so, but he does, yeah, but you probably never heard of me or whatever. I don't think we've met. And he quickly changes the subject to move away from that. So there's that kind of hint that Larry knows Joshua somewhere. And I'm thinking that's going to come up later.
Yeah,
I thought it was a very deliberate tease.
Yes.
Even though it was done very subtly.
Yeah, I agree.
But I'm kind of curious. And yeah, because it makes sense because he did have that military background from the comics. But in the Grant Morrison Doom Patrol, Joshua, as a leftover member from the previous incarnation of the Doom Patrol, he's not a superhero. He just goes by Joshua Clay. But he's there to as a go-between between the chief and the Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol. And so he's kind of like this more advisory type character. So I'm kind of wondering if they're going to bring him into the main series at some point.
Yeah, I don't know. It would be interesting to see, won't it?
The main storyline a little bit.
Yeah.
Because maybe something will happen and then Joshua won't have to take care of the original Doom Patrol, and then he'll just kind of hang out with the new Doom Patrol.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. But and then maybe those secrets between what the deal is between him and Larry will come out.
Do you think
that's just speculation on my part?
Do you think the original Doom Patrol, do you think they understand the reality, or are they just living in this fantasy?
That's a good question. We're not quite sure with Celsius and Lodestone. We're not with Arani and Rhea. Mento seems he's aware of it.
Yeah, but just embraces living.
Right. He's living his old glory days as a younger man.
Yeah, and
because now he's old and in a wheelchair and pretty much infirmed.
Mm-hmm.
But tragically, now the whole bit with Arani, we get that little tease that for Larry going that Arani believes that she's married to the chief because she's been so obsessed with him. And you kind of saw that when the whole illusion was wiped away, there was these kind of just obsessive drawings of the chief in her room.
Yeah.
And so she fixated on him and kind of created this delusion that they fell in love, they got married, and she got to be with him, even though that's the reality is that never happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was a kind of a nice nod to the comics, because in the comics, there was an actual relationship between the chief and Arani.
Right.
And although they didn't get together, Arani kept telling, when she was trying to look for the chief, in the comics, she told the Doom Patrol that, hey, they were married, just as a way to say, hey, this is important to me because Niles is my husband.
Right.
Because she was more of a manipulator, like the chief. So it was kind of a nice nod, I thought, to the comics.
I agree.
All right. So anything else about these characters?
Nope. I was happy with it. I liked.
Yeah. We should probably talk really quickly. So the reason we find out that the original Doom Patrol stopped being the original Doom Patrol is that they had this confrontation with Mr. Nobody. And there's this we find out through the course of the story is that there was this event on a Memorial Day in a park where there's like a bunch of people there obviously enjoying the holiday, and Mr. Nobody has this kind of butt-shaped balloon with a jukebox that's blasting Hot Diggity by Perry Como over and over, and it drives them insane within like 20 minutes. And then he also has this transformation ray, which turns these policemen into piñatas that the crowd in their frenzy just rip apart and start eating the candy insides of these formerly living cops. So I thought that was a very Grant Morrison-esque idea.
Yeah, and
even though that I don't think that was actually one of his. I think that was just Tamara Becker Wilkinson's idea, but it was very Morrison.
Well, and I think what I felt important is that Mr. Nobody is a dangerous villain. He comes across just hilarious. And you know, the way we've talked about how much we love Alan Tudyk, and you know, when he sits there and
he's great comic relief.
He is comic relief, and it makes the show better. But I think this was important to see. He's evil,
and he's very dangerous.
Yes, and so I was very happy with that.
Yeah, and
I thought that was an important point because it's very, you know, when you think about it, making people think that bodies are piñatas, and it's when
I think they actually became piñatas.
And
I don't think they were mentally thinking this. I think they were actually became piñatas.
But it wasn't candy they're eating.
Well, it was because their insides had turned to candy.
Okay, because the way it looked with all the blood inside.
No, because they talked about there was a transformation ray on the jukebox.
Okay.
So there was an actual physical transformation.
Okay, fair enough.
So
it was just creepy.
And I think that was the point. But obviously, and so we find out that Mr. Nobody has essentially kicked the original Doom Patrol's ass really hard.
Yes, absolutely.
And they never recovered from that.
No.
And they were just completely traumatized by the battle. So it's almost like Mr. Nobody told Jane about the original Doom Patrol as a warning.
Yes.
Going, hey, look, this could happen to you.
And I believe that's exactly what it was.
If you come after me.
Yeah.
That's my theory anyway. All right.
I totally agree with that theory.
Okay. Anything else about the original Doom Patrol?
Nope. Good stuff.
Okay. All right. Just thought it was really important to talk about that. All right. Third topic. Don't be cruel to a heart that's true. So obviously that's Elvis.
Yes.
So we had a song by the Platters, we had a song by Sinatra, and a song by Elvis Presley.
All from the 50s Billboard charts. Yes.
Very good. So yes, that's the theme for this week. 50 songs in honor of the setting of this episode.
Yes.
So this I want to talk about. I want to talk about Vic. I want to talk about his father Silas, and I want to talk about Cliff. Because Vic needs rebooting, as we find out, and because of Cliff kind of pushing the Silas call button, his father comes to help reboot him, and at the same time, Vic is like going, I don't want to be left alone with my father. Cliff, will you watch me? And Cliff goes, okay, but I need you to kind of hack my daughter's Facebook, or as it's called, Facehole.
Yes.
Here. And so that I can see what she's up to. So that's the deal they make. And so I want to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I found this interesting. Um, there, Cliff wants to cyber stalk his daughter.
Right. He's just looking for any information at this point.
Yes.
About his daughter.
Mm-hmm. And he's, because he's, now that he knows his daughter is alive, he wants this so, so bad. And, Vic's like, okay, I don't want to do this, but then they get the thing. Vic doesn't trust his father. He loves his father, but because of all the baggage they've had, they worry about that. And so I thought that was an interesting dynamic. What I found especially interesting is Silas going, yeah, I gave Niles all kinds of advice on how to design you, but he's all retro and
talking about Cliff.
Yeah,
yes.
And Cliff's like, it could have been better, night and day,
Yeah, he's just like, well, yeah, Niles wouldn't take any of my suggestions.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I thought that was interesting because it's also a nod to Morrison's run a little bit, because in Morrison's run he has Doc Magnus, the guy who created the Metal Men,
mm-hmm.
build Cliff a new body for a brief time.
Nice.
Something better. So I'm wondering if Silas is going to create Cliff a new body.
That would be very cool.
And so I'm just kind of wondering if that's going to happen at some point. Mm-hmm. But it seems like they at least teased the possibility of that. But
Absolutely.
I thought it was really interesting, especially like again if you're a Morrison fan.
Yes.
Now Vic, you mentioned Vic not trusting his father. There was this bit. Vic notices that his father was recording stuff on a flash drive,
mm-hmm.
and he sees his father kind of pocket the flash drive after everything's all said and done. And there was that interesting moment that Vic goes up and hugs Silas, freaking Silas out. Like what?
Yeah, like why are you hugging me?
Like why? I'm not a hugger. What's up with this? And we find out that Vic essentially pickpocketed the flash drive and started looking to see what his father had on him. So there's still a lot of trust issues that need worked out between those two.
I was a little sad because, once again, I'm, an optimist and always thinking the positive. I was thinking, his dad turned off he put his privacy mode in effect.
Yeah,
he said, hey, it's time I let you become your own man.
Right.
And so I was like, oh, look, they're hugging each other.
They made a breakthrough.
Yeah, they made a breakthrough, but really it was all about trying to pull that back.
Yeah.
So I was a little sad.
Well, you kind of wonder, like, okay, and you notice Silas didn't say anything about why he was recording keeping everything on that flash drive. So Silas was keeping something secret, and Vic is still keeping something secret.
Yes.
And they obviously still have a long road to go, I think. Mm-hmm. But there, at least, like you said, there appeared to be some kind of breakthrough, and that was because of Cliff.
Yes.
Who, in this great scene, lays into Silas. He goes, he tells Silas, look, I'm no big, cheerleader for your son, but when we were dealing with all that stuff with the D creator, he stepped up. He actually did something noble, and I kind of respect that. And you should too. Mm-hmm. And basically says that, look, hey, you need to, just lay off of him and let him be who he wants to be.
Yeah.
And I think Silas took at least a little bit of that to heart, or at least, for a little bit for a brief time anyway. And that's what kind of drove him to, like, okay, I guess you can have your privacy mode back.
Mm-hmm.
And so Vic agrees to help Cliff with hacking his daughter's Facehole account. And Cliff has this kind of funny moment. Is like, is that because I stood up to your dad?
Mm-hmm.
And Vic wouldn't admit it, but I think that's why.
Exactly. I like their Cliff is fun.
He's starting to come around
Yes,
as
he
far
is.
as Vic goes. Yeah.
Yeah.
He tries to high five him, but
Yeah.
gets left hanging. Vic leaves him hanging.
Yes.
I thought that was good.
It was very good.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. So we'll see what happens more between Vic and Silas and Cliff, as we find out. Once he finally has access, he goes on his daughter's Facehole account, and he sees what is presumably one of his old friends named Bump.
Yeah.
That apparently has somehow become her stepfather or something. And he's all over the pictures with his daughter, and he's not happy about seeing his daughter. He's mad at seeing Bump with his daughter.
Yeah.
So, and he gets all mad and he's smashes the laptop. And so we'll probably learn more about that later.
Yeah.
About what the deal is with Bump and why Cliff is so resentful of him being with his daughter. Or is he just jealous, do you think? Or both?
I think both. And he's not thinking correctly, Charles.
Right.
Everyone thinks he's dead.
Yeah.
And so
why wouldn't there be somebody else in the picture?
Yeah.
But I think the thing what Cliff is thinking, I'm guessing here, is that he's probably going, well, of all the people, why does it have to be this guy?
Exactly.
And maybe we'll find out more about that later.
Absolutely. But
Okay.
that was a nice twist at the end.
Yes.
To go, what?
Yeah.
Bump.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was kind of like, well, be careful what you wish for when you want to look at your daughter's Facehole profile.
Yes.
Be careful what you wish for.
Exactly.
So, all right. Anything else about this episode before we move on?
No. It was like I said, I really liked it.
Yeah.
I was very happy with it.
All right. Do you have any favorite lines of the episode?
No, I didn't. I'm sure there were, but I'm watching it late on Friday night and didn't trust any. I just really liked it. I'm good.
Okay.
What do you got for us?
I've got a few quick lines here.
Okay.
So, early in the episode, there was this when on the videotape the interview between Chief and Baby Doll,
Mm-hmm.
and Chief is going. He's talking about he has to leave, and he's trying to explain this to Baby Doll, and he's going, "It's only for a few days, Baby Doll," and Baby Doll goes, "It's 7. 7 is a whole week. You'll miss Pancake Day." So I thought that was a cute quote.
Yes, that was.
And then there was a later exchange between Jane when she comes right up to Cyborg and kind of presses that red glowing thing in the middle of his chest, and she goes, "Hey Siri, what's the Doom Patrol?" And
Yes.
Vic is like, "Will you please stop doing that?"
Yeah, that was very good.
That was really funny. I like that.
Yeah,
moment.
it was.
There was a later exchange between Vic and Cliff, where they're kind of, Rita and the others are kind of researching, going through the microfiche, trying to find out some information about the original Doom Patrol. And Vic goes, "Here we go. Okay, Doom Patrol, a minor superhero team active from the early to late 50s. And then they just dropped off the scene." And Cliff says, "They're so smiley. Looks more like a creepy sex cult than superheroes." After seeing them in their costumes. There was a funny line from Larry after Flit teleports them to where Mento and the original Doom Patrol are. He goes after he's trying to recover from teleporting, and he goes, "Please God, don't let me puke in my bandages."
Yeah. Yeah, that was great.
That was a good line. And then Larry has another good line later when, after the whole horrible condition of the estate is revealed and it looks all creepy and Mento's messing with his mind and whatnot, he's like, "Okay, this is going to be okay. We just happen to be in The Shining, which is fine. Shelley Duvall and the kid got out, and so will we.
Yeah, that was really well done.
That was a great
I
line.
like that, yeah.
All right. So what's your rating for this one?
So I liked this one a lot. I thought it, like I said, I thought it carried the story forward, but also revealed a lot. So I also loved the ending. So I'm going to give this 8 out of 10 Lou Reed Perfect Days.
Nice. Yes, that was a great song that was used in this episode.
Yes.
Yeah, always good to hear that song.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Always good to hear some Lou Reed.
Absolutely.
I really liked this episode. This was a lot, as a longtime Doom Patrol fan, this hit a lot of marks for me.
Yeah.
So I give it 9 out of 10. We kicked the apocalypse's ass sandwiches.
Nice.
Because those are these little finger sandwiches that Cliff makes for Jane, and she smacks him to the floor.
Yeah.
So, but I thought it was a really funny name that Cliff gave it.
Good.
All right. So I thought that was good. So I really like this one.
Good.
All right. So I do have some Titans Tower news. We got some big casting news this week.
Ooh,
as they
okay.
gear up more with season 2. First off, an actor by the name of Chella Mann has been cast as Jericho, one of the new Teen Titans, created by Marv Wolfman and George Perez.
I saw that on the Titan Talk Facebook page.
Exactly. Go figure. So this is why you need to be a fan of the Titan Talk Facebook page.
Absolutely.
Which we'll tell you how to do that here in a minute. So according to Deadline, Jericho's described as, quote, son of the infamous DC villain Deathstroke, played by Esai Morales, that we talked about last time. Joseph Wilson is the Titan known as Jericho. Mute after his father failed to rescue him from having his vocal cords severed by assassins, Jericho has the unique ability to possess anyone just by making eye contact, just like he is in the comics. This gentle-natured yet proud hero has proven himself a formidable Titan.
Ooh,
so presumably Jericho actually joins the group. At least that's the way it sounds here.
Yeah.
And thankfully it sounds a lot closer to the Jericho from the comics than what we got on Arrow. If you happen to see Jericho's portrayal there, which wasn't even close.
I watch Arrow, and I can't remember Jericho being in there. So obviously,
it was that memorable.
Yeah,
yes.
it obviously was something that went over my head. Yeah.
I think it was around season 5. I think.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken. But yeah, it was not a great faithful adaptation. But interestingly, so Chella Mann is apparently a deaf transgender actor, model, and YouTube star. He's also Chinese and Jewish. Okay. And so because of course in the comics, as you know, Jericho uses sign language. At least that's the way Marv and George depicted him. So it's kind of makes sense, the perfect sense. Hey, we'll get a deaf actor and who knows sign language.
Yeah,
so
I think that's great.
So this is a good opportunity
to
give a deaf actor a casting in this.
Absolutely.
And so it's a little bit of a diversity casting, but I think it's kind of a welcome one here.
Absolutely, I agree.
And as is someone with a deaf nephew, I'm all for it.
Good, very nice.
All for that. It's good to have that representation. It's important.
Absolutely.
All right. So also we got Joey's sister, Ravager, cast, Rose Wilson. So Chelsea Zhang has been cast as Ravager. And Ravager is described as daughter of the deadly assassin Deathstroke. Rose Wilson was forced to undergo the same procedure that granted her father nearly superhuman abilities, becoming a weapon known as Ravager. Ever resentful, she seeks out the Titans, not only for their protection, but to get back at her father. Knowing how dangerous it is to be the offspring of their deadliest foe, the Titans take her in, but that doesn't necessarily mean they trust her. So again, I kind of threw out this speculation earlier. I'm kind of wondering if in this version of the Judas contract that Ravager is going to take the role of Terra here.
Yeah, I think it could, right?
Because she wasn't in the original storyline.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of wondering if Ravager is going to fill that role of Terra.
Hmm.
I'd love to see Terra, but if we don't, I'm guessing it's going to be Ravager doing that role of betraying the Titans, presumably,
Hmm.
or at least for a brief time. So Chelsea Zhang, she's like 22, and she's probably best known as playing this character named Brittany on the Disney Channel series Annie Mac. And she's also appeared in the films The Perks of Being a Wallflower and Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. And she's also been in episodes of Scream Queens and Chasing Life, if
Okay.
you're curious.
Okay, very nice.
But two big roles, obviously very important for the Judas Contract storyline
Hmm.
coming up whenever Titan Season 2 comes out, presumably late in 2019.
Yeah, you would think so.
See.
Yeah.
All right. We do have some Tell It to Titan talk. We did get a email from Holly from Wisconsin.
Yay, Holly!
You want to read her email?
I did not get it.
All right, I've got it. All right, so Holly writes in. Oh, go back. There we go. Hey, Charles and Jesse, what an episode. Loved getting more backstory about the Doom Patrol. I think there's more story to be had with the Doom Patrol, Joshua and Niles dealing with those who cross him. And I really like the scene between Cliff and Vic's father. Cliff knows what it's like losing a kid, not in the way Vic's dad has, but it's still a loss. Loving the character development with all the main members. I can't wait to see what happens next week and what new clues and information we get on Niles and Mr. Nobody. I'll wrap it up here. Holly from Wisconsin.
Thank you, Holly.
Thank you, Holly. Always great to hear from you, and thanks for writing in on Titan Talk.
Absolutely.
In addition to Next Stop Everywhere. We always love hearing from you. And really glad you're enjoying the show like we are. So if you want to be like Holly, and who doesn't, because Holly's one of the cool kids.
She is very cool.
Very cool. You can reach us, email us like Holly did at titantalkcast@gmail.com. That's titantalkcast@gmail.com. And we'll read your email if you want. If you don't want us to read it, you could just let us know. But we'd love to hear from you. Love to hear what other people think about Doom Patrol so far as we go through these episodes. And or if you have any thoughts about what's coming up in Titan Season 2, we'd love to know that as well. So drop us your thoughts about that. We'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, you can reach us on our Facebook page, Titan Talk, the Titans Podcast, where we post all kinds of news as it comes out about Titans and Doom Patrol. Or our Twitter account, @TitanTalkCast. That's @TitanTalkCast on Twitter, where we'll also do the same. And obviously, you get a lot of information about when we post new episodes. So, and also any kind of news or stuff that Titans or Doom Patrol related that we'd just like to share. So please check that out and follow us there as well. It'd be great. Jesse, where can they reach you on the interwebs?
So I can be reached at Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter. I am on Facebook. You can find me, Jesse Jackson, in Louisville, Texas. You can hear Charles and I talk about Doctor Who on Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. He and I are right now about once a month getting together and talking. But the other weeks, Charles is having a wonderful collection of guest stars joining him, guest hosts, I guess, so to think.
Yep, special guest companions.
Yeah, they have been just really some wonderful, wonderful episodes. And
we've been very lucky to have some great fill-ins.
Yeah,
but obviously they can't compare to you, Jesse.
That's very kind of you, Charles. You can also hear me talk about music and Bruce Springsteen on Set Leslie Bruce on this fine network. And coming up in a couple of weeks, I will be discussing the new Game of Thrones with the Small Council Matters, part of the Tuning into Sci-Fi TV network. And so I'm looking forward to talking the final season of Game of Thrones.
That's awesome. Looking forward to that.
So, Charles, how about you?
Of course. I'm at Charles Skaggs on Twitter, at Charles Skaggs on Instagram. Facebook, of course, Charles Skaggs in Hilliard, Ohio. And my blog, Geeky Things,
damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn good coffee and hot, where I talk about all the stuff we talk about here on Titan Talk, any kind of Titans news, Doom Patrol news, news of other upcoming DC Universe shows, news of my other podcasts, including the aforementioned Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast that I do with Jesse, and currently a lot of fill-in co-hosts who are all wonderful. And we talk all kinds of classic and new Doctor Who, and also Ghost with the Twin Peaks podcast that I do with Zan Sprouse, wife of comic artist Chris Sprouse, where I talk about all things Twin Peaks, David Lynch, any kind of weird, cool pop culture things that spring to mind, just as we do here on Titan Talk. So, and if you're a fan of Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol, you embrace the weirdness, and hopefully Ghost with the Twin Peaks podcast is right up your alley as well. Please check that out if you would. I would definitely appreciate it.
Absolutely, they should.
All right. Yeah, all
Good.
right. So next time on Titan Talk, we're going to talk Therapy Patrol, Episode 7 of Doom Patrol Season 1, as we get very close to the halfway point of Doom Patrol Season 1. So this is described as after a violent outburst from Cliff, the team engages in some self-led group therapy, leading to some growth within the group as they are knit closer together.
Good. Very nice.
So we'll see what happens there, because I'm sure there will be some confrontations between the team members. One or two, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Good.
All right. So can't wait to talk about that with you next week, Jesse.
I agree.
But everybody, thank you again for listening to Titan Talk. Hope you're enjoying Doom Patrol. Hope you're enjoying Titan Talk. And we'll see you next time for Therapy Patrol right here. Titan Talk, the Titans podcast. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.